Welcome everyone. We are today doing a regenerative business, regenerative organisations webinar. Welcome to everybody, and welcome to people who are watching this on the catch up on the recording. What we'll be covering today is quite a lot. There is quite a lot to get through. We're going to have 90 minutes, but that's going to also include plenty of time for questions as well. What we're going to cover: what is a regenerative business and how does it differ from business as usual, as we might call it? What are the key issues facing businesses and organisations now, and key issues facing leaders, both personally and professionally? So what we recognise is that everything's connected, so we're looking at this in a very holistic way. And then we're going to explore how regenerative approaches are the answer in a complex and uncertain world. We're going to lead you through Think Like a Forest unique regenerative framework. So this is myself and JK have co-founded Think Like a Forest, and we have these frameworks. I'm going to explore those with you to show how they can simplify the complexity that can be inherent in regenerative transformations. And please, I hope you can stay for the whole session. There are going to be some invitations at the end to have a reduced price on our fundamentals program, but also we're offering a limited number of one-to-one question and answer sessions, which are basically mini consultations with you, just to explore more in a more bespoke way for your particular circumstances. So we can only offer a limited number of those, and we are offering those the first refusal on those to obviously people who come live to the sessions, and then we'll be sharing more widely as well. So I'm going to hand over to JK, and we're going to do what we always do in a regenerative practice, which is just becoming present, really. So JK is going to lead us through it. So please get comfortable, and I'll hand over to you. Thank you, JK.
Thanks, Sarah. So yeah, as Sarah says, this is a practice that we don't really negotiate in terms of things these days, and that, just allowing ourselves to find our human beingness in the present moment as well. So even though we're halfway through the day, halfway through the week, so much can happen in our lives and work. So just to invite you to take a moment just to be in that moment for just now. So you can have your camera off, or if you're comfortable to have it on, and just connect into yourself, to your physical and biological body. Just bring your attention to that physical body. You might want to wiggle in the chair or stretch, and just notice where your breathing is coming from. And just allow yourself the time and space just to connect and regulate that breathing in a way that feels calm and present and aware in your body. And perhaps either with your eyes closed or in a soft stare, just take a moment beyond your physical body to check in with yourself and find a feeling that's coming with you today. Perhaps you find a word to focus on around that feeling or emotion. Maybe that word is connected with hope and energy, or perhaps it's connected with busyness or a burden. And just take a moment in your body and mind to adjust or adapt, to be compassionate of that. I'm going to invite you to zoom out above your body now, high above, until you can imagine or sense or visualize the earth in its wholeness, a vast interconnection. And just take a moment to pause with that wholeness as part of it and beyond it. Now I invite you to seek a memory in your mind or in your heart of a favourite place in nature, zooming back down into earth to find that place. Maybe it's somewhere you visit regularly, perhaps it's somewhere you long to go, or somewhere that holds a special memory for you. Just allow yourself to explore that place in nature, what it means to you, how you feel, what you see or sense. Understanding and being curious about how that part of nature is cultivating and creating life of its own. And perhaps you feel inspired by the ways in which it does that. Having noticed that place in nature, just begin to bring yourself back to your physical, biological body. Might want to stretch and adjust, take a deep breath in and out, holding on to those feelings and that connection with your nature space. And if you feel comfortable to do so, you're welcome to share the place that you found in nature in the chat. Thank you everyone for taking part.
Lovely, thank you. So do feel free to continue to share that as we move through. So we're going to start by exploring, so what is a regenerative approach? There's no assumptions here that you've even heard of this word before in the context of businesses and organizations, or that you've, done any progress on that journey at all. So we love working with people who are, right at the start of that journey, or people that are a bit further down the line. So what is it? So regenerative approaches recognise that humans are part of nature, and they also learn from how successful living systems operate. So there's 3.8 billion years of evolutionary success out there that we can be learning from if we actually discover how to actually listen to this wisdom that is all around us. The regenerative approaches draw inspiration, experience, and knowledge from a wide range of sources. So, a huge body of knowledge, and we don't, distinguish really. It's all about, does this create conditions conducive to life? And then we can bring in all sorts of experiences and thought leadership from a variety of sources, including also ancient and indigenous wisdom as well. The fundamental grounding of all of this is creating conditions conducive for more life to thrive, and that includes human and the more than human world. So we're creating conditions conducive to life. And increasingly, many people are realizing that this isn't actually a choice, but is a necessity because of our current circumstances and how far we've strayed from what was essentially the way that the rest of life operates. So I put here, it's not rocket science, and that's kind of for two reasons, really. Regenerative approaches recognize that ecosystems are complex, and yet so much of our world is modeled on the idea, the reductionist method, which breaks everything down into small parts and studies them independently, rather than seeing things as a interconnected whole. And that might actually work when you're building a rocket, although there are huge inherent problems in that as well. So we want to see this reductionist method as more of a useful tool for certain situations, rather than a model for how life actually operates. So we all have the ability to be regenerative innately in us. If we look at, you know, the trees and the plants outside, they're all regenerative. They don't, you know, need some extra external body of knowledge. So this is something we can grow from within us. So we don't need gurus telling us what to do. We need guides that are helping us to come up with questions and ways of thinking and actions, ideas for actions. So that's how we position ourselves as guides on your journey. So we want to move to life-centric mental models for viewing the world, which are much more accurate and much more beneficial. And we'll explore that in a little bit more detail today as well. And we want to transform systems from extracting from both humans and the rest of the living world to creating life. So, you know, inherent in that word regenerative, and it can involve, or it does involve by necessity, challenging our assumptions and past learnings, and that can be sticky. And for that reason, you know, it's always good to have guides on that journey with you and other peers and people who are kind of embarking on that journey as well, so that you can have that mutual support in those sticky tensions that come up inevitably. So we'd love to know what's the most pressing issue you're facing right now in your business, organisation or workplace. So if you could share in the chat, that would be really fantastic. Let's open the chat and we'll kind of read some of these out, but getting traction on helping organizations to have this conversation. Yes, absolutely.
And that the communication element of this came up yesterday as well, didn't it, Sarah? And
absolutely.
How we find the language and the connection points. Yeah, how to make marketing communications. Yes, so similar. This is something we're finding a lot with people who go through the program, and also in the regenerative space and our own experience as well, I think, is figuring that out.
So starting the conversations, that's really lovely. So I'm going to share a case study from Oriel, who is one of the co-founders of Elemis, who came on the fundamentals program with us recently. And one of the key things she said that she got out of it was feeling more confident in having the conversations around regenerative transformation. So that is definitely, you know, a really big part of what we're supporting people to do, and how to then also communicate that within your teams, or whether that be with, you know, the wider stakeholders or the public, etc. So there's lots of communication elements that we are really digging into. And, you know, we'll be honest, we're all learning together on this, to, you know, that we may be a little bit earlier on that journey, but essentially this is something that we have to all transition to get together to move from these more extractive ways into regenerative ways.
So we've got working across silos, and then collective entrepreneurship as well are two things that are kind of coming up. So there's that collaboration and interconnection tensions that are kind of explored in both of those areas, shared by Miriam and Darlene as well.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's move on. So the traditional approach when we've got problems or issues is to jump into this problem solving approach. And what we say with, you know, is that approach is part of the old way of doing things, and that we need to be transitioning more to a regenerative way of approaching issues. And I just want to talk you through the key differences, because you might think, oh, well, you know, solving problems, that's great, you know, and a lot of people doing good in the world kind of really start with this approach, and then there's that gradual realization that actually there's some fundamental problems with it. So in problem solving, we're looking generally at the surface of the problem, whereas whereas in regenerative, we're looking at systemic factors underlying the problem. So we often talk about kind of pulling back the curtains to try and see the unseen, show the unseen, really. The problem solving concentrates on the problem itself, and regenerative looks for the potential in the situation. So where there might be a tension on the surface, say with team members, actually that might usually is underlying maybe some frustrations that there's potential being unrealized. In a problem-solving approach, it's often reactive, reacting to the situation. And the regenerative goes beyond proactive because it's actually dynamic, recognizing that things shift and change. So it's much more responsive. With problem solving, often that involves looking for quick fixes, and obviously there's targets and goals associated with this, and short-term financial considerations looking that really are pushing us in that direction of quick fixes. And with regenerative, there's a much longer journey, but that doesn't mean that we're working towards this long-term vision, crossing our fingers and waiting for all the planets to align that we've got this perfect regenerative future. We're having a long-term vision, but looking for quick wins that align with that journey as well. So, there's definitely something to be said for having, getting started on this and having results and wins whilst also being on that much longer journey. In a problem-solving situation, we might ignore it, so that's a very common strategy for problems. And then obviously that, they have the risk of exploding. The other option is, hit it with a big hammer to hope it comes up. And then, of course, you end up playing whack-a-mole. So you hit it with a hammer over here, and then it pops up in a different way over there. And in regenerative, instead, we're looking for points of potential. So sometimes these are called acupuncture points. So really sort of, small ways that we can apply energy that is going to have a multiplier effect. And we can be quite strategic about that. In problem solving, we might seek to control and dictate outcomes. And, that's very much aligned with that kind of command and control, having goals and targets. Whereas regenerative is much more sensing and responding to a situation and realizing that control is part of that mechanistic mindset that we're trying to move away from. And, so we can be much more realistic about the change that happens as a natural part of processes. In problem solving, the softer solutions are often inverted commas softer, because I really hate that term. They're often marginalized. And whereas in regenerative, we really embrace the knowledge that an inner and outer journey are all part of the same thing, that because everything is interconnected, and that applies to leaders, team members, and anyone involved in this. And problem solving often looks to extract from elsewhere as a means to achieving goals. And again, this is linked to that short-termism as well. And regenerative really transforms that fundamentally to creating life as a means to achieve a vision. And here are some of the potential outcomes of a problem-solving approach versus a regenerative approach. Often there are emotional consequences. So, in that control situation, that when results don't happen to fix the problem, there's often blame, shame, or people might not even want to embark on trying to confront issues because they're so afraid of failure. And that kind of leads to paralysis. And that's the kind of paralysis that we really don't see in living systems approach to issues. And in regenerative, there's much more mutual support even when things don't work out as expected, because we've anticipated that life moves as a natural part of processes. There's burnout, stress and overwhelm, and often energy is applied in the wrong direction, not at the root causes. So, that's a key difference as well. Unintended consequences occur, and in regenerative we're much better able to manage outcomes, and that ability and adaptability is something that's really, really key when we take this living systems approach. And instead of extraction, we're moving towards this creating life, which what we see in living systems is that this creates spirals of abundance. So life creates more life. So if we can create the conditions for that, then it happens on its own. And we as leaders, so for example, creating the conditions within our team, then that will create a momentum of its own without us having to put in the continued really hard effort that we did at the start. So we invite you to explore what a problem-solving versus a regenerative approach would mean for your issue. So we haven't got time in the webinar to do this, but what I would suggest, if anybody's watching on replay and those of you that are live, actually, make a note of this question and actually sit down and think, look at those differences. What direction is that leading you in for your particular issue? And then we need to be realistic about the barriers that we can identify in moving towards a regenerative approach. So there is no this is not about creating some kind of utopia where everything's rosy and life just doesn't work like that. There are definitely barriers. We need to be realistic about them. So it might be within yourself, some own personal growth needed. It might be barriers and issues within your team that have already been mentioned today. There might be technological issues arising. And what we want to do with that is also to dig a little deeper. So we're always looking, when we're supporting you to go through this regenerative journey, we're always asking those deeper questions with you. So let's explore some of those now that might be kind of underlying this transition. So I'd invite you to think about the stories that you're telling yourself about why you, your organisation and the world can't benefit from and transition towards a regenerative future. Now, I've heard all of these and, definitely at certain times maybe thought some of them myself and, felt them inside of myself. And that's okay. We need to be sensing in and realistic about our worries and our fears. And collectively, these stories add up to worldviews that are obviously getting in the way of the transition and the transformation towards more regenerative futures. So, just be compassionate with yourself. If these are coming up, then listen to those voices and be compassionate with them, because they are very natural. And then I'd invite you to also consider, what stories are you telling yourself about why you can. So whether that be you, your organisation, and also the whole world, why we must transition to a regenerative future. So have a think about those stories that you're telling yourself, and I'll just give you, so a few examples here. I want a better world for future generations. I want to prove that humans don't have to be destructive. I want to lead the way, be a pioneer for others. Want nature and life to be abundant, want to be part of the solution, and then social justice and equal chances and opportunities in life. And then there's also one which plays a big part in my life, I think, which is there's no other option. So I can't see another way that we can create that livable future for humans and for other life without this regenerative transformation. So digging into your why for this as well. So I'd invite you to capture your own why. So why is this important to you? And that's something that is unique to you. And no, nobody else is going to feel exactly the same way as you do, but it is really a source of energy. It's a source of motivation. It's a source of strength when things don't go to plan, and it's also a really good way of connecting and collaborating with others as well, to recognize that we also have shared whys to a certain extent as well. So if anybody wants to put their kind of why within the chat, then you're very welcome to, because it's lovely to hear from other people. So as you're doing that, we thought at this stage, at a point in the webinar, we would share our own whys. So yes, of course, we'll share our bios and our experience with you. But really, what's fundamentally important is, why do we want to do this work? And why are we bringing these programs and all these resources and support for businesses and organizations and individuals as well? And so I'll hand over to JK, who can explain your why. And
thank you, Sarah. And it's so interesting when we begin to connect with our why, because there's so many stories that weave together, isn't there, that can make and motivate our whys for ourselves. So yeah, I'm JK, everyone. And my why came through two pinnacle points, really. I was working as a leader in third sector charity, private, mental health and employability. And I was seeing all the good work that we were doing in the community, but also seeing how much people were burning out, these amazing, talented people within this kind of sector. And so I was sitting with that of how can we nurture ourselves? How do we avoid kind of burning out? And then I'd be looking at the news or noticing the differences in the natural world and thinking about, well, how are we going to get the headspace to do the work we need to do to care for our planet when we're all burning out ourselves? And of course, those two are connected in some way. And I'd experienced my own separation from nature. I grew up in the wild. I was a proper wild child. Nature was my friend. And then when I got into the seriousness of being an adult and finding a career, I took some time away from nature, and it was a real absence for me. And I had a real awakening moment when I was seeing these two kind of issues in the world, this one about people burning out and the one about the world burning out. And I stopped my car and I stepped outside instead of driving to about the 4 meetings that were all planned in my diary. And I went into the woods, and there was a moment there where I was just like, okay, this makes me feel really good. And there's a lot of knowledge and wisdom in this place. So I set up my own business, Where the Mind Grows, a fair few years ago now, and I coach teams and individuals out in nature with a focus on mental well-being, but planetary well-being as well. And I was thinking about, how do I communicate all this? This theme's come up already for people. How do I communicate all this that now feels so separate to the human race? That we've got this wonderful teacher and kind of partner in life. How do I help people to find their way back to themselves and nature? And one of the ways that I did that, alongside all my eco-psychology and regenerative and mental health and coaching training, was to one day Google, how can I think like a tree? And I came across Sarah's book. And I was saying last night, I was like, oh, I can't possibly contact an author directly. So I got myself over that, and Sarah and I had a conversation. And from that, we've gone on to weave and collaborate some ideas. And I'd overheard a conversation one day about with another Think Like a Tree facilitator around work-related things, and my ears pricked up, because that had been my background, kind of helping teams. And I really realised that in my own business and in the work that the regenerative space is inviting us to step into, that we can feel really lonely and not sure of how to make an impact when we're all alone. And so collaboration for me is real key. I see it in nature. I work in the woods pretty much every day now, and I see that collaboration happening in nature. So I've modeled that into my business, and part of that is coming together with Sarah to create Think Like a Forest. So yeah, that's my why, one of many as well.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. I'm just going to fiddle with my settings. For some reason, it's not showing. The settings are not showing me.
I'm just looking at some of the whys that people have shared. So being a good ancestor, a source of energy. I love that. It really is a source of energy, actually. Like when you think about a flourishing future, it is a fuel, isn't it? So social cohesion, building strong communities. Yeah, this sense of connection and belonging comes up a lot, I think. I think a lot of people feel lost, don't they, in what the modern world is, and that this nature inspired way of being and doing can help as well. And trust, yeah, trust and cooperation, that came up a lot in some of the programs that we've run, both in the fundamentals, and we do an adventure version of this as well, and how to retrust ourselves, and how to build trust across teams and communities as well. Sarah, you good to go with your why? Have
Yes,
I buffered
I
enough?
don't know why the spotlighting isn't working properly, but anyway, I've had it so that hopefully it's recording both of us as well. Yeah, so my why. So I grew up very nature connected in Leicestershire in Charnwood Forest, and I always, looking back on it, I realised that I always kind of could see how life worked, and how there was this kind of interconnectedness of everything, and I kind of held that really with inside, and that wasn't really didn't really come to light until much later, where I can kind of make sense of why that was so intuitive to me. My first career was as a human rights lawyer. I worked for a large charity, and I was also a leader in that charity for a while, and that was fantastic, sort of supporting refugees and asylum seekers with that work. And then in back in 2010, then there was a lot of legal aid changes, and I and everybody else were made redundant, and I'd realized that the refugee crisis was only part of a big interconnected whole that was also including climate and ecological breakdown and extraction and all of these things. So I decided that I wanted to place my energies into that kind of wider space. And 21 years ago, so 10 years before that, we'd bought a small holding in South Derbyshire with a view to um, exploring how we could live more sustainably, really. And I wanted lovely place to bring up my children. Now my youngest is 21, so we're going through that phase and into the next generation of wanting to explore that for themselves. And as part of that process, I discovered something called permaculture. I initially discovered it in relation to designing the land, and realized that actually that it had so much more to offer. It was really the principles contained, which are living systems principles, that got me intrigued. And then I realized that there was a whole other wealth of other regenerative practices out there that I could then explore and learn from. So I've been on a journey of lots and lots of regenerative trainings with, lots of big names, and also obviously my own journey, which also includes physical ill health, lifelong chronic illness. So that's also informed what I do. I set up Think Like a Tree 7 years ago, and that's really predominantly a personal development program. And then teaming up with JK has allowed us to bring living systems principles in a different direction for businesses and organizations. So really it's an expansion. And I guess the why underlying all of this is because I see this as the way forward, that it just seems such common sense that we as humans should be aligning the way that we live and the way that we work with the way that all living systems operate, because obviously human ecosystems are ecosystems too, and if we divert from that path, then we do cause huge amounts of problems. So as well as Think Like a Tree and Think Like a Forest, I'm also a design council expert, and also part of the faculty of the Royal Society of Arts for their Capabilities for Life programme. So I really also believe passionately in building community around this transformation as well. So all of these things are a really key part of my why, and tapping into that why is really a daily practice as well. We've where we are here in South Derbyshire. Fabulous. So we're going to, for the rest of the session, explore some specifics about issues that organisations are facing. And I just want to put it in some context to start with, which is that if you do obviously like this approach and want to explore it further, it can be helpful to understand where we're coming from in terms of why we've brought our regenerative offering into the world in the way that we have. Because when JK and I came together, our why our visions came together, and we went through a design process for our programs and offerings, and we realized that we wanted to bring things forward in certain ways. So the things that include small group sizes, and that's really been backed up with our experiences with working with businesses and organizations, that those small groups mean that we can really support you through that learning journey. And it also means that you can then make relationships with your peers for mutual support as well, meeting people where you are, catering for learning styles. My background in refugees has made me absolutely passionate about no jargon, and also accessibility, and obviously that's something that's personal to me with the chronic illness side of things as well. And we really wanted to make it very practical. So you can go out there and learn the theory. And of course, we've got a huge amount of resources that are going to take you through all of everything that's involved in regenerative business or for your organizations. But also it needs to be practical from day one. Everybody's busy. Everybody needs to be able to kind of move through quite quickly in terms of the changes that can come about as a result of this process. And we think that that's what we've managed to achieve. And we like to think of a basket. So the reason I put this picture of 3 baskets that I've made from my own willow and my own small holding is that we like to think of Think Like a Forest as a basket that you can hold other things in as well. So if you have come across permaculture, biomimicry, systems thinking, donut economics, bioregional transition, all of these things, I could name 100. It can be a bit confusing to think, oh, well, where does this fit in? So if you Think Like a Forest as a container with really useful frameworks and lots of activities and information, but that other things can then sit within, it helps to make sense of the complexity that all of these different slightly different approaches are offering. So we live in the real world, so whilst there might be some transitions that you've already done in terms of sustainability, B Corp, we're big fans of B Corp. It aligns really well with regenerative, but regenerative is a step beyond things like B Corp. But again, what our programs have is an opportunity to be a container to hold all of these things. And we love plenty of learning from nature directly. So even though our fundamentals program is an online program, there are lots of invitations to learn from living systems directly by getting out in nature, by getting your team out in nature. And we've seen that as a real highlight of the program so far, that it's been lovely to have people share within our platform, you know, that kind of direct learning from nature and nature connection as well, that they've been sharing with each other. You do get access for life, and I'll talk a little bit more about some details of the programme later in the session, but let's get on with some actual issues that I know you've come here to hear about as well. And yeah, I mustn't miss that last one out. Fulfilling for the facilitators as well as the people on the program. I think there's something really fundamental about that. You know, we don't want to be going out into the world, and I'm not just talking about us, but any of us, you know, doing things that fundamentally, you know, don't fulfill us. So we have kind of designed this so that it's fulfilling for myself and JK. And the thing that's most fulfilling for us is obviously when we see that transformation and know that we've been part of that. And here's just a few testimonials. I think that one of the things that is really fantastic about this program is how it's attracted a wide diversity of different people from different backgrounds, different types of organisation. We've got Rick there who, you know, works predominantly doing sort of gardening and maintenance at Hannah Fields and working with volunteers. We've got Anushka, who is a coach. Cherry's got her, you know, is a solopreneur, and then Oriel is from Elamis, who's the co-founder, and obviously very, you know, product-based business rather than service-based, which others are as well. So a real mix and great feedback from everybody as well. So let's then get on to exploring some issues through a regenerative lens. So we want everything that we're considering to be both practical and transformational. So we will be inviting you to think about things in a different way, but then also to put that into practice so that you're actually moving that forward within your business or organisation. And here's just some of the issues facing businesses and organisations right now. We've got this kind of merging of all of these issues that are coming up, and obviously it's a particularly difficult time for businesses and organisations. And then, of course, because business and organisations and the people within them are all interconnected, there are a huge amount of problems for leaders as well. So, you know, everything from that work-life balance to worrying about the health and well-being of the team members, time management, productivity, loneliness and isolation, which has already been mentioned, and, you know, kind of not feeling able to prioritize your own health and well-being, worries about the future, decision fatigue. So, you know, having to make lots and lots of decisions, one after the other. You know, all of these issues are coming together. And, you know, you may be experiencing one or more of them because they are, of course, all interconnected. And the really important thing to think about when we're exploring a regenerative approach is there is no one size fits all approach. So what we can't do is say, okay, this has worked over there. We're going to just, you know, have a case study and we're going to learn from it and have a best practice guide and a whole load of policies and procedures, and we're going to then bolt it on over here. That's not how life works. It's what we want to get away from with a regenerative approach. And so instead we need flexible and powerful frameworks as a guide. So you don't want to just go out there and be overwhelmed by, okay, so let's take away all the guide rails and transition. it can be quite a scary place. So we've thought long and hard about the frameworks that people need that have enough support and guidance to hold other things, whilst also allowing for the uniqueness and the potential that's in you, your organisation, your people, your place, to emerge as the future. So we're, very much concentrating on your uniqueness, your business's uniqueness as part of this interconnected ecosystem. And that's where the strength and potential lies. And yes, that can be a bit overwhelming, but we're here to help you every step of the way. And that's why we've developed the programs like we have. So these are our two simple frameworks. So they're simple, but they hide a world's worth of complexity within them. So they give enough of a guide rail for us without being dictating in terms of outcomes and solutions. The framework on the left is our Think Like a Forest 12 strands framework. And all of these 12 strands are nature's secrets to success. And that allows you to harness the success of living systems for your organization. And this framework has been put together after extensive studies of many, many different living systems, frameworks, and living systems themselves. I did write a book in 2019 called Think Like a Tree, The Natural Principles Guide to Life, which is primarily a personal development book, but as part of that, and subsequently, I've done a lot of research of different living systems frameworks, and it's really all about how can we bring that to support people in ways that are accessible and easy to understand. Of course, you need a balance of all 12 of these. You can't just pick one. So there's a big focus on resilience at the moment in business, as kind of a backlash, if you like, against being lacking in resilience that was revealed over the last decade or so. But of course, that's only one part of the picture. We need to be balancing resilience with effective use of energy, for example. So there is an optimum amount of resilience balanced with efficiency. So, all of this, we need to be building up this picture of an interconnected, healthy ecosystem, and our healthy ecosystems are strong in all of these strands. So essentially, within the fundamentals program, we have a module for each of these strands, which has a huge amount of detail, a huge amount of learning resources, activities, signposting, resources, all sorts of things, but within this framework that you can work within. And then the framework on the right-hand side, the 6 systems dimensions framework, allows you to keep the whole picture in view. So what we experienced as part of our learning, and also with businesses and organizations that we've worked with, is that, for example, so people can concentrate on that personal development, leadership development capabilities, and then they lose sight of the maybe carbon accounting that they need to do within their organization, or vice versa. They're looking at their sustainability and pushing that forward, and forgetting that their team is and having their team behind that, and really having a joint vision towards that sustainable future is really important as well. So this allows us to be healthy or move towards health in all of these systems dimensions, right from ourselves right through to the biosphere. And it reminds us as well that we can make a difference, that we are a fundamental part of that, all of us, and it's an empowering system as well. Did you want to say anything, add anything, JK, about the frameworks before we move on?
I don't think so. I think you've covered it all today. I guess the only one point is to say that also that these two interconnect with each other as well. So all the strands are present and can be explored at each area of this, and vice versa, kind of just thinking about how the six systems dimensions can then support the strands in coming to life as we explore it at all six areas.
Yeah, so an example of that would be, the collaborative strand. Then, your team, it would be looking at how you collaborating, working together, communication within your team, and in the wider ecosystem systems dimension, it might be how are you collaborating with stakeholders, or even the relationships with your customers, that kind of thing. So yes, we're looking at all of those strands and all of those in all of those systems dimensions. So like I say, it seems quite simple, but there's a huge array of complexity, underlying it, and it, that's why we sort of want to help guide you through it as well. And we have had some really lovely feedback about the actual frameworks from people that have been on the fundamentals course, or are going through that journey. And we do try and cater for a variety of learning styles. So there's videos, there's things to read, there's activities, there's things that you can then take out to your team. And Matt here, it was lovely. I went over to Hannahfield to interview him afterwards, and he said, if all layers of society implemented the 12 strands, I would suggest you solve the world's problems overnight, which is absolutely lovely to hear, that somebody is so kind of invested in that framework. And of course, it's not surprising in a way, because it is just an expression of how life works. So if we were aligned with how the rest of life operates, rather than this sort of human deviation that we've been on, then yes, we would have a much, much better and a more rosy future, or we will have a much better and rosy future. So again, we want to make sure that things are being easy to understand and accessible. So we have a mighty network. It's called Inspired by Nature Network, and within that you have the Think Like a Forest course, and each module is really simple to work through. And then even within the same platform, you have the group sessions and the office hour sessions. So you're exploring everything within the one platform, and the course community is within there as well. So you can even access it on your phone as an app. So it's really easy to access. And what people found was, they might have a bit of time that they'll watch a video in between, when they've just got a bit of time, and just keep that momentum, really. So let's explore a couple of common issues that we've encountered with clients with the help of these frameworks. So the idea is just to give you a bit of a glimpse of how these frameworks can actually work in practice. And we thought, as it comes up so often, that financial issues would be one that we could explore. So financial issues take a whole range, or an interconnected often range of issues, everything from cash flow to the financial burden of rules and regulations, the cost of raw materials, wage inflation, and grants, and all sorts of interconnecting financial issues that organisations are facing. And so this is how, just some of the ways we might explore how the 12 strands support issues with finances. So we would, with an issues-based approach like this, you'd be looking at all the strands, and then, the systems dimensions, and thinking, okay, so what do I need to do? What do I need to explore further? And that can be things that you might need to do within your team, or it might be with your customers, or a whole range of different explorations, really, that can then be documented within this process in the action plan part of the programme. And I just wanted to give an example because this brings it to life much better. This was somebody an organisation that we worked with, and they were struggling to have consistent income when relying on a grant funding model. And that they were feeling overwhelmed and overworked, and that was chasing funding whilst also trying to do the core work as well. But they were finding that their energy was directed away from that core work, and that was kind of really surfacing tensions with and frustrations within the core leadership team. And the other thing about funding is it can mean that you're forced to comply with funding hoops rather than what the audience might be asking for, or where the creative energy. So this was a creative industry. So there was a tension that we were able to explore there as well. And there were a huge number of resources within the programme. These are just a very, very small few. And of course, you know, when you come on the program, you don't do all of the activities within it. You pick the ones and we help you decide which are the most appropriate. And then that will then be according to what your specific needs are. But there is a huge choice to choose from. There are lots of reflective questions as well for you and your team as well. And case studies and further reading resources and that kind of thing. So this is just a little snapshot of some of the things that you might want to explore in that kind of financial context. And then these were some of the outcomes in this particular case of the client that we work with. So what we supported them to do was to add a consultancy model to diversify that funding income, and that's something that they hadn't really considered before. And there was a lot of, there was a certain amount of personal development needed to and confidence building to actually feel confident to go out with that consultancy model. And we supported them to reframe how their relationships with their wider ecosystem to show how valuable they were. There was personal growth around learning from some past experiences, and that included being a pioneer, and that can always be tricky being in that pioneer role, and so supporting with the personal growth as well. We explored hierarchies and power structures relating to the funders, and we're able to support them with shifting that power dynamic with some key big funders. And also the third strand is the collaborative strand, and through exploration in that strand, we were able to support them to go out and find collaboration opportunities with other organisations for accessing much larger funding pots, and also sharing that admin burden of those grant applications. The fourth strand in our 12 strands framework is all around in right relationship with place. And this came through really strongly with this organisation, because we were able to then support them with really digging down into what was their local and regional expertise. And they'd been working for a very, very long time in that particular location. So they had a really strong relationship that they weren't really fully taking advantage of. So that place strand was really important in actually developing that further. And then, there were practicalities around bringing in new expertise at board level and for day to day, and supporting with, or who would be the right fit for the vision. So the second strand is all around vision and purpose. And so, ensuring that visions are aligned within recruitment, so that anybody that you bring on board is actually going to be aligned with the overall vision of the organisation. So a huge sort of diversity of different outcomes that, again, spanned all of those systems dimensions really. So that was a really wonderful a case study to work with them, and probably demonstrates the sort of diversity of different outcomes that can be achieved. Did you want to add anything on that case study?
I was just going to say, and I think this has been common with a lot of the people that we've both, within the wider regenerative movement, but also within Think Like a Forest, as well as this particular organisation. They came with a plan. They came to tell us what they were going to do. And then the model kind of helped them to understand for themselves, because there was a lot of resistance and tension. They were finding a lot of problems coming up with the plan that they had, but still aiming to push through that. And so it invited us all to stand back and be both in their ecosystem of an organisation and work through the 6 systems dimension and the strands, but also to understand the dynamic nature of regenerative, and the fact that we can then get the richness of feedback from being, in the present kind of understanding of it. So a lot of the plan got lost, and as you've said, Sarah, it was opening up new opportunities when we really looked at their ecosystem as well. And I think a bit that we haven't put on here was around how that then led them to bring that collaboration together. So bringing in other people within the creative arts sector and holding a space to actually look at the systemic issues with the funding that they have in their sector, and how this had cultivated sort of negative competition across organisations, which was damaging the overall purpose that all of them had in alignment. And how holding that space for conversation and thinking about how collaboratively they could start to begin to shift and support the change in the way that funding happens within the sector, so that it became positive competition. It was there for the bigger cause, rather than a negative kind of one that was creating tensions and toxicity across the sector really as well. So yeah, just to add that.
Yeah, I mean, transforming those tensions into potential and opportunities is one of the key parts of regenerative, and the one that is really, really difficult to do on your own. To have peers around you who empathize and can support, and then guides like ourselves who kind of experience that as well. I mean, certain part of it is holding that tension between the achiever, the person who wants to get stuff done, especially when you've got that pioneer role. It's something I certainly identify with in the community woodland social enterprise that I co-founded about over 10 years ago. And that kind of, you want to get stuff done, you've got this great vision for how the world can be, and then also holding that tension to then really transition more towards a role of nurturer and supporting potential in other people, rather than being that kind of dominant driving force. That's a part of it, the journey that I've been on and learned a lot through that process.
And particularly where we've worked with if you're a founding member of your organisation, you have seeded that for yourself, and the connections and complexity that come with that relationship as the needs of your business grow or shift or change as well. So there's often lots of that self stuff, isn't there, in linking and connecting with the organisation.
So we're going to explore something through the 6 systems dimensions framework now. I'm going to hand over to JK.
So I've already talked about in my why that I was seeing this like time issues, overwhelm, burnout and stress. So it's nothing that won't be familiar to you, that it comes up as an issue that we've kind of can face in our businesses, or even with our customers too, that there's too much to do, too little time, and juggling. And it's like, how do we unlearn, how do we unravel the messiness of where our organizations might be when we want to create a change in a regenerative future? So I'll just talk you through that. Sarah, you can skip the slide on. So again, just giving you a bit of an example of how the 6 systems can support us in exploring something like the opportunities and potentials to shift burnout, the stress and the overwhelm that we might be feeling within our world, but also to understand what those stresses and overwhelm are as well, because we found that everyone had a version of stress, but also what was really motivating people to explore regenerative aspects was an understanding, a sense in that we are working within a stressed system, an overstressed polycrisis system as well. So we found that even when people are kind of seeking out the regenerative space, that there's this real understanding of the stress and overwhelm at the biospheric kind of level and wider ecosystem. So when thinking about examples of this, and as Sarah said, you know, as you begin to delve into these frameworks, they'll be unique to you, but there's some commonalities in things that we can explore to help us. So, and often a lot of the people that we're working with, you know, they might be working at some of the wider areas of this 6 systems dimensions and trying to manage, you know, stress and overwhelm in their team or under resourcefulness within their organisation, and often forget those sort of inner and outer needs of self as a leader as well. So within the space of self, you can start to understand, like, what are the needs, what are the personal development, what can resource you and help you to, you know, have those basic needs met, but also be able to nourish yourself for leading through times of change and uncertainty. Within the team, you know, actually we've got a number of activities in which we encourage people to go out into nature and learn from nature as well, so they get the benefits of the well-being, they get the attention restoration theory of dropping the cortisol levels just through that nature connectedness. But then thinking about, you know, as a team, how can we come together and share the load? What's the resourcefulness within the team? Things like, you know, lots of organisations that we had are simply, you know, not at that stage where they've built in a wellbeing policy, or feeling like they're moving too fast, that they're losing those connection points within the organisation and they're feeling dispersed, and that having an impact on stress. So bringing back things like regular supervision or structuring meaningful team meetings. And we had some really practical ideas. So everything from the biophilic design of an office space. So what we mean by that is that bringing nature into offices, or helping people to connect with local parks and things that they could go to on their lunch time, and thinking about the flexibility of remote working, but also the impact of remote working. So how do we help people to manage themselves when they're alone and segregated? And similarly, we looked at, like, what are the community provisions? So often we're disconnected from the community, our wider ecosystem. So, you know, and everything from, where are the beautiful, lovely local coffee shops you can go and have a break in and have some beautiful stress-busting connections with a lovely local person. So things as simple as that, right, for you to kind of the biodiversity of the areas in which we live, and supporting and understanding that when we're a healthy organisation and a healthy individual, that we can also grow our capacity to be able to support the wider kind of initiatives as well. So, you know, within, we talked just in the example before, but looking at, like, what are the opportunities for partnership working that could level the load in some way, or where you can share provisions. So sharing, you know, community spaces that can be used to support local businesses, but also that perhaps allow people to manage their time and energy better by meeting in more centralised spaces as well. And then looking, as I said, you know, sensing into the fact that the world can feel like a stress place, and there's lots of stress systems, and how can we be part of that bigger world in the changes we make at all these levels to manage our stress and overwhelm, in order for us to have a you know, to change the rhythm of life in some ways, so it can be life sustaining. We'd just like to move on. So, you know, there are when me and Sarah were talking about this, and like, which example should we use? And it was almost like we could map it out across everyone that we've worked with, I think, so far. But here's some examples of how the stress and burnout was showing up. So feeling like there were not enough hours in the day, and that busy, I talk a lot about busy culture, you know, when you're like, hi, how are you? I'm busy. Oh, how are you? I'm busy. And no, not really going under the surface of that it just becomes part of the way that we work. Spending times on things that aren't fulfilling. A few of those flow experiences were coming out across people who felt that stress and overwhelm. So no elements of being able to be creative, feeling disrupted in work, so getting into something that might be really meaningful and then Teams chats popping up and things like that, and the frustrations that are linked to that, and a sense of always feeling like there's too much that you're juggling, your plate's spinning, and something's going to go wrong, and a great sense of actually, doom that then kind of can be amplified by some of the elements of chaos in the wider world as well. And a lot of people that we work with are experiencing that high cortisol kind of culture of the fight, flight, freeze, and there was a lot of burnout symptoms for people, but also for those who have gone into a purpose-led organisation or set one up for themselves as well. This sense of immense fear and heaviness that perhaps they've escaped an extractive system or culture. They've set something up for themselves, and again some of those feelings are emerging for them because there's too much work, or they're having to try and stretch to find income and things, and worried that their regenerative or sustainable approach is going to fail in some way, and the stress that that's causing. So we found obviously that a lot of that was kind of coming through as well. And just as Sarah said, part of the experience, I think, like a forest, is to have a trundle around the forest of resources that we've created as well, and that people within the courses have also contributed. So people are sharing their own resources or approaches that just brings the richness to how people navigate and create their own path through. But some of the things we worked on with people around stress were those reflective questions, looking at case studies of how people might have been able to help or change the flow of overwhelm before. We looked at things like how to focus in on the circles of influence model, what's within your control, and how to manage your energy and time in focus and service to your purpose. How to create structures longer term that will be more beneficial to a healthy soil, to a healthy ecosystem, a team, an organisation that can manage its time, its workload and its resources for well-being. And also some deep inner stuff around composting and letting go, belief change work that might be holding back, whether that was imposter syndrome or sitting in a role of I'm the strong one, or I'm the leader, or and taking that into a state that was becoming unhelpful and unhealthy for themselves and the wider ecosystem as well. So people navigate in all sorts of different ways, but some of the outcomes that were coming from that, and one lovely thing that we had was a WhatsApp group was set up among people where they were sharing their time in nature. So they weren't just spending more time in nature, but they were sharing those moments with each other in the group, of moving beyond the imposter syndrome and that pressure to keep up, to overachieve in a lot of way, and really embracing their unique styles. So this was an ability to cope with the ups and downs. I think one of the beautiful things that's really kind of I love about regenerative is it's not in that toxic positivity of everything's going to be all fine and we're all positive. It actually sits with the space of the uncomfortable and the uncertain, and helps people to build confidence and resilience in that as well. So we've also seen better communication, better connection, and deeper connection actually in the relationships and mutual support that's being offered across both teams, and also for sole traders or solopreneurs, finding who is your team when you are often standing on your own, whether the spaces that you can make connections with. So letting go of the things that you've been holding on to that have been either emotionally impactful and causing stress, or stopping your business or yourself from moving into that regenerative way of being and doing. And empowering others, sharing the load and seeing opportunities rather than problems. And I think that has helped the people that we've been working with, and certainly in our own businesses, to explore sort of this bringing things to life, seeing things with new eyes, and being able to find new resources that will support the long-term benefits of your organisation or your team as well.
Thank you. So we wanted to give you a bit of a flavour of what a journey through our Regenerative Organisation Fundamentals programme would look like. And, this really comes out of us putting a lot of work into designing the course that will have the best outcomes for people, and also our experience of obviously leading that program, and also working with organizations and leaders. So on day one, we want to make sure that people have the materials and videos so you can get started straight away. And there are 18 modules that you can work through at your own pace, and you join the course community. There are people already on there, and that what we really love is that we've got this Mighty Networks platform, which is called Inspired by Nature Network, and within that, then you have a Regenerative Organisation Fundamentals course space, and you have access to myself and JK through that platform, throughout your whole journey and beyond. And we've done a lot of training where you are in really big groups with maybe somewhere between 50 and 200 people on a Zoom call, even though the Zoom call is live. And we wanted to offer something that was much more nurturing, and you'd have much more access to us to really ask questions that were relevant to you and your transformation. So that's why we keep the groups small, and we have that platform where you can ask us questions. There's also a one-to-one onboarding session with me, so that an orientation session, and also really digging into, well, what do you want to get out of this program? So I can then best signpost you to some key resources, and talk about your learning style as well. So how best is it going to be to get the most out of the program? Then the weekly, there is office hours sessions. So that means like an hour a week where I just hang out, and people rock up and ask me any questions. Again, the groups are really small, so you get to ask whatever questions coming up. And it's really good for motivation and accountability as well. So, we're not going to be, cracking the whip. That's not how regenerative learning happens. But we do recognize that it can be really helpful to have these touch points where which help you to kind of set your own momentum through this. And then from October 2024 to January 2025, excuse the typo, we have 6 live group Zoom sessions via Zoom. And so those are a couple of hours each, so we really get into the regenerative being and the transformation, supporting you as a group with group support. And there is a choice of times for different time zones plus recording, so everybody can access those as well. And then within that, there are tasks for you to perform to actually again make it really relevant to your particular context. There's also the One Planet platform to record action. So this isn't just about learning how to do regenerative and be regenerative. It's also about taking specific actions, and so that is one way of recording those. And then we had a lovely group sharing session at the end of those group sessions, which everybody shared how they'd got on and what their journey had been, and that was really, really rewarding for other people to hear. There's a certificate of completion if you need that for your employment or learning log. And then what we want to make sure is that you get access beyond those group sessions as well. What I would say is, obviously, we're in June now. The sooner that you sign up, the more time that you have to explore those resources, and then have access to those office hours. So there's definitely a benefit from, there will be people I know from previous times who will sign up, kind of midnight on the night before the 1st October session. But they'll be emailing me after the closing date. That's what happened before, but you really will benefit by signing up early and then getting familiar with the course materials. And that's why we want to offer a discount now, so that you're going to be able to get the most of that in an early way. The program is for a wide variety of different businesses and organizations, and really, you know, we're saying that we want to work with small or medium size organizations that are for profit or not for profit, that have a purpose at their focus. So that's what, you know, that's what makes us come alive. That's who we love supporting. We know that we can really support people in those transformations. So it's rewarding for us, and then obviously transformational for you as well. For coaches and consultants, you're very welcome too. This isn't just a how to learn about regenerative, though. You do need to commit to a personal transformation too. So you know, you need to be doing the work in that regenerative journey too. Solopreneurs, if you have an ecosystem, then you're very welcome to join as well. So, you know, Cherry is a graphic designer, works for herself, but she's got quite a wide ecosystem around her, so she's come on that program. But if you're a solopreneur startup, you may be better off with the Think Like a Tree program. So talk to me about that. And similarly, you know, if you've any doubt, if you look at the website and you've got any doubt about which program is right for you, then just reach out to me, Sarah at thinklikeatree.co.uk, and I can signpost you to what would be the best option for you. So we're doing an offer at the moment by the end of June, so that you can sign up early and then get access to those materials that you can start looking at and working through. So that's £100 off is that offer when you book by Friday the 28th of June, and you can pay in instalments and still get the £100 off. So, you know, do feel free, if that's going to help things with you, for you to actually pay in the instalments. And we know that people often have questions about whether this is right for you. So we have 6 slots available for one-to-one question and advice sessions. This is a 1-hour session. I would say please only book these sessions if you are serious about progressing to the fundamentals program. There are lots of other opportunities to ask us questions in other forums, but we will want to keep these open for people who you know, considering the fundamentals program, but just really have questions about, is this right for me? These are my particular circumstances. What might I get out of it? And it's a mini consultation about the circumstances of you and your organisation, but there are a very limited amount. So if you want one of those, then do book that up quickly. We will always signpost you elsewhere if there is a better fit. Myself and JK know the regenerative space very well now, and you know, there may be circumstances that there would be a better fit for you. And you know, we are our vision is all around how people can have the best regenerative transformation for themselves and their businesses, not about everybody signing up to our specific course. So do bear that in mind. So we are going to take questions in a minute, and I'll stop the recording in a session, but just want to leave you with what next. So looking at those 6 systems dimensions, what one thing can you commit to do with regard to your work? So there's been a lot of information obviously in this webinar, and you might want to look back at the recording and refresh yourself on some of it. But really, you know, we do want to be taking action, and just taking one thing beyond would be really lovely. So anybody's welcome to share in the chat, and I'm going to stop the recording now, and we can have some time for questions.
Thank you, Sarah. I think a couple of people